RPG Maker is an engine known for making lots of video games, usually of very low quality, because it's so easily accessible and rookies can throw stuff together without too much difficulty if they spend a little time on it. Heck, I've made some stuff in RPG Maker myself back on the 3DS. Sometimes you might actually find some gems in the rough. And if I had to personally pick a favorite RPG Maker game, it would probably be Lunar Lux, but that game's code has been so heavily altered and changed that calling it just an RPG Maker game would be like saying Sulaco was a Doom clone. Wait a second. Interestingly though, despite being designed for RPGs, RPG Maker itself is arguably more associated with horror games than any other genre. But really, there's plenty of good choices to look for when you're looking for RPG Maker games. You have things like To the Moon, One Shot, a truckload of games that are not YouTube friendly, and the subject of today's video, LiEat. A charming game with a distinct visual style, memorable characters, and a fun story about the hijinks of a man constantly moving around changing his face and name, while tagging along is our protagonist Efina, his adopted daughter, that's also a baby dragon. Like my other videos, I plan to go through the full game, however for this game, I'll also be showing how to get all the achievements, since it's not too hard to do if you wanted to get into trophy hunting. This might be a good starting point. This game is split up into 3 story arcs that are chronological, so we'll be starting with Chapter 1, The Vermilion Vampire. Long ago, in a small town, there lived a family of vampires. They were very kind souls and got along well with the humans there. But one dark night, one of these kind vampires attacked a human in town. Before anyone knew it, they had already sucked out all of the human's blood. The news that they had attacked a human was soon revealed to the others. The vampire was executed, and the townspeople lived happily ever after. ... Are vampires real? Are they bad guys? Vampires did exist, but not anymore. And if they were bad, I wouldn't know. In fact, I even doubt this vampire attacked their victim willingly. It's getting late. You should get going to bed. Why can't we all sleep together? If you do, the wolf will come, so lock your door and fall asleep quickly. If you stay up too late, you won't be able to get any sleep at all. Okay. Good night, Father. ... After the opening narration, we find ourselves entering a new town with our protagonists, Efina and... Now, you may be wondering, who is... Well, he has a gimmick of changing his name and appearance in every chapter, but his actual name reveal is halfway through Chapter 1, so until then I'll just call him Leo, as that's the alias he's going by. Also, something else about this game I love is the town theme. It's very good. If you watched some of my previous videos, you might actually recognize this song as I've used it a couple of times. Anyways, checking the house in the top left will allow us to meet an NPC named Carol. She's got a prior history with Leo, and I'm not sure if it's meant to be a running gag, but a lot of characters know him despite him changing his name and face at almost every meeting. When you're done speaking, check her drawer for the Pants on Fire achievement. I guess we should now probably get on with progressing the game. Head your butt on up to the top right of the map where you'll find a man standing outside. This is Keith Rigfire. Dumb name, but as the only NPC that's out and about in the daytime, he's kind of important, and he'll rent you a place to stay for a little while, or for at least the brief time that you're in town. Now make the conscious choice to repay his kindness by breaking into his house and stealing his candy from his cupboard for the Have You No Shame achievement. Now our actual house is the one with all the boxes in front of it, and a bit of an issue with the first chapter, and a lot of RPG Maker games for that matter, is that it does suffer a bit from the run around and talk to people until you can progress. But thankfully, the environment is kept very small, as the town is just 3 screens not counting the inside of the buildings, and there's only a handful of NPCs to deal with, so it's not too bad. Now at this point, after you've got yourself a house to stay at, you want to go back and speak with Carol, where you'll be able to progress the story and get into our first battle. Efina is a lie-eating dragon, meaning she'll cause any lies told to manifest into physical beings, and then she's able to eat them, which means you can do battle with them. These are your enemies for 90% of the game, but really combat isn't the main focus of this game, so I'm not too worried about the limited variety here, and they actually do have a couple of different designs, which is neat at least. As for combat, it's about what you'd expect from a basic RPG. You have your attacks, your skills, and your items, with the main focus being buffing your party up and throwing your big damage numbers at the enemy. Now, when you get done speaking with Carol again, we'll have her talk about how there was once a family of vampires that lived in this village, but supposedly they'd all died out a long time ago. Keep this in the back of your mind, it'll be important soon. After all that discussion with Carol, you'll finally be able to explore the town again. Now it's just Efina, and the first thing you want to do is head back into your house and check the drawer to put underwear on your head for the Haposai achievement. I don't get it either. But to make some actual progress, we actually want to head to the southernmost house and speak with the bird lady that has wings on her head. This is Rosalie. She'll talk about a few other stories, most notably the dreaming illness, because, well, let's just say that'll be important in a future chapter of the game. But she's also going to ask us to head to the library and speak with her assistant, Levin, who we'll be able to recognize by the fact that he's a cat. You may have noticed that this world has some fantasy aspects with a bunch of different races. I'll go into more detail with this in the next act where it becomes kind of relevant, but for now, just know Levin is a talking cat man and Rosalie is basically a Hyentia from Xenoblade Chronicles. You can also speak with Leo for a little optional cutscene that's kind of funny. These little optional scenes are all throughout the game, so talking to them is generally the best way to go to get the most out of the story and the most out of the characters. But you know what, I'm kind of okay with that. It's not a long game, so I think extra dialogue does add quite a bit to it. Now, it may seem unclear as to where to go next, but we really only have one NPC left to talk to, so let's head on up to Keith's house and speak with him as he spawns in some lies for you to fight, so easy experience it is. When you're done fighting, go talk with Keith again. I really like the artwork and the cutscenes in this game. It gives the characters a lot more personality than you'd get from just some text boxes. Also, our race. Yeah, Keith, subtle as a brick. Subtle as a brick. And there's also going to be a room that's usually locked, but now it's unlocked that you just have Efina. You can go in here and you can meet with Keith's little sister, Rachel, and speak to her. Rachel is a quiet girl that doesn't leave the house or talk very much. In fact, she spends most of her time in this chapter just in this room, and we'll just casually talk about how her dad strangled her. Yeah, classic RPG Maker stuff there, if we're being honest. Nice detail is how after the conversation ends, since Rachel told a lie at the end of the cutscene, a little lie will pop up in the room that you can fight. Nice bit of consistency there, game. After interacting with Rachel, it gets darker outside as it gets close to evening and the music changes. This is your best chance to head to the village entrance and do battle with one of the moths in the area to get the achievement To the Flame. This is also the only time you actually need to come down to the screen, and that's only if you're going for the achievement. If you're playing on the Switch version, you basically never need to come back to the village entrance. After that, it's time to head home and speak with Leo to give the daily report about all the rumors surrounding the vampires, as we are also kind of information brokers ourselves. That's how we make a living. So we collect rumors, spread them to other people, and, learn other rumors ourselves. Kind of a neat little thing. We also learned that, Efina is only 5, so she's not exactly good at communicating things the best. While it may be getting dark outside, we can't call it a night just yet, however, because we need to speak with Carol one more time, where Efina will tell her about her earliest memories. I believe there was also a prequel manga associated with this game, but I've personally never read it. It gives you a little bit more insight on Leo as a character though, which will be a major plot point going forward throughout this chapter and the next 2, especially chapter 3. After you're done speaking with Carol, night will fall, and I cannot stress this enough. Make sure to save your game. I'm serious. Especially if you're going for all achievements. If you don't care about the achievement, just go back home, go to bed. But for the next achievement, we need to have Efina go into the back alley to get the You've Chosen Poorly achievement. So yeah, we just got a bad ending where a 5-year-old got murdered in an alley. Fun! Now, using our immersion-breaking powers of save and reload, you may think, oh, it's gonna be one of those games, but surprisingly, that's the only bad ending not associated with a final boss fight, and it's the only one where Efina just straight up gets murdered. Pretty creepy and also kind of dark how that's like the first one you get. Anyways, let's not get murdered and just head on home. Well, that certainly didn't sound good. You already know where you need to go, but if you check on Rosalie, she'll mention how that scream woke her up, while checking on Keith, well, he's nowhere to be seen, and Rachel's door is locked up tight. When you're ready to progress, head on into the back alley. Regardless of your choices, the wolf will be claiming a victim tonight. Since Efina did not get murdered, instead Carol is the one to die. We can't do anything for her, so the only thing we can really do is go talk to Rosalie and tell her to call the cops. Why does Leo not do it? Well, actually his phone is broken, that's why. Efina is reasonably upset by the whole person she just talked with getting murdered and has apprehensions about just leaving her body back there, but we can't go disturbing a crime scene. With the cops on their way, the best thing you can do is simply go to bed and get ready for the morning. When you wake up at 10 outside the next morning, you'll see that the town has been populated with the cops, with 2 characters in particular standing out, that being Officer Brett and Captain Neil. Both major figures in the police force and also dragons much like Efina. They've got a history with Leo, but the captain doesn't seem to have any bad blood with him, so that's good. These are going to be major characters appearing throughout all 3 chapters of the story as well, so it's good to be on their good side. At this point in the story, the gang splits up, and you'll just be controlling Leo. Nothing to do here but head around and talk to the major NPCs, and there's not too many left now. The first of which is Rosalie, who is more than willing to give you a lore dump about the vampires of old that once lived in this town. However, after an incident where one of them lost control and killed a human, the entire family was executed save for one member that managed to escape. The vampire went into hiding and went on to have children of their own, but over time the blood became more and more diluted. But whether or not there was a chance it could re-emerge in the future generation, like a recessive trait, is unknown because a lot of the pages were ripped out of the book detailing it. But at the very least, we were able to learn the author, who is named Jael Regfire. That stupid name seems kind of familiar. Anyways, yeah, you just want to go interrogate Keith, and he sure is acting suspicious as hell. Sadly, without Efina here, we can't really prove what is and isn't a lie, even if it's pretty obvious. If you try talking to Rachel, she's just going to tell you no. Now to progress the plot, after we've spoken with the other two, we need to go speak with Captain Neil and see what he knows. Thankfully, we get a bit more insight as Carol was stabbed to death multiple times, but there was a surprising lack of blood given the wounds she sustained, and the supposed wolf that was rumored to have been spotted. Suspicious. Anyways, back over to Efina. You can free roam and talk to the minor NPCs, but they have nothing of value to offer, so instead you want to head into the library and check out the book talking about vampires. However, Efina can't read very well since she's not even 5 years old yet, but the check isn't fruitless as you'll be able to find an old photograph that can be useful as evidence going forward. The next step is optional, but if you talk with Rosalie for a while, she'll actually give you quite a few cookies, which is more healing items. That's nice, but more importantly, we're going to need these for another achievement at the end of the chapter, so you're going to want to hold on to them for then. Another side thing we can do is speak with Brett in the house that's right next to ours, and you'll be able to play a little mini-game. I say in massive quotation marks, as really you're just kind of selecting the word that he tells you, and he'll give you some candy for your trouble. This is a useful healing item that works on the entire party, which really just means Efina and Leo for this chapter, but it's still good to have, nonetheless. We also learned that Brett doesn't really hold any bad blood towards Leo in particular, he just doesn't like humans in general.
I just f***ing hate people!
With the picture in hand, it's time to make some actual progress, as you want to go speak with Rachel, where it's revealed she spent most of her life in this room, never really going outside in the daytime, but the photo makes her talk about some memories. Also, after learning someone died, her reaction is, "Aw man, not again." So you know, this isn't exactly an isolated incident. Our next stop is to meet with Captain Neil back at his house, where you will learn a bit more about the mysterious nature of dragons, as well as things like their horns and wings, and other tidbits that most dragons avoid human contact. Brett and Neil are exceptions as they're police officers, and Efina is another big exception as she's being raised by a human. The last major tidbit from here is Leo's true name is not but Theobald Leonhardt, and for the sake of my sanity, I will be calling him Theo going forward, so I won't get all the different names mixed up because it gets kind of ridiculous. When you head outside, Efina and Theo meet back up as night begins to fall, and we have all the information we need. It's time to confront the main suspect. At this point, there's really nothing to do but start interrogating Keith now that we have the living lie detector back in our party. Having him run the same questions again will reveal that some of his statements are lies, and after taking them out, Theo presents a photo and other evidence, and Keith says we should leave town quickly because it's a dark night tonight before using Carol's weapon against us. This part is probably the most in line with what you'd expect from an RPG Maker horror game, as it has the creepy music, the
good atmosphere,
and that general feeling of unease as something's about to come out and attack you at any second. I wouldn't call this game scary, but this part manages to be a good bit unsettling, so it's got some points for that. You need to check all the books in the house, meaning the library as well as Keith's diary, as it gives you instructions on how to kill vampires. You can also try checking on Rachel, but her door is actually locked up tight, and once you do all the stuff over here, you're going to need to fight off some enemies, and once they're all slain, you'll net yourself a key that's needed to progress, but this is also where the other RPG Maker horror trope comes in, as a new enemy known as the Massive Lies will spawn in. This monster will chase you at a slow rate of speed, and unlike other enemies, touching it automatically initiates battle. And when you get into battle, you're fighting 7 enemies at once, which is probably the only time in the game you're actually in danger of dying, at least until, like, Chapter 3. That being said, while they're not exactly easy, they're not impossible to bring down, and they could actually be a good source of grinding, but you're going to want to be careful and probably wait until you at least get out of the building first before you start fighting these guys, because you'll have more room to move around outside. With that handy dandy key, we can enter a room that was locked up until this point and see what looks like blood and a bunch of destroyed teddy bears? Stuffed animals? Whatever. Creepy. Anyways, you can read the book on the bookshelf, which reveals the remaining pages of Jael's diary, where he mentions how one of his children was born as a vampire, but the other was a human. He knew he should kill the vampiric child, but he couldn't bring himself to do so, with the final note being that it was going to be a dark night tonight. After the cutscene ends, you'll be rescued by Brett, but the town has become overtaken by the Lie monsters, including those masses that chase after you. Thankfully, Rosalie and Levin were safely evacuated, but we've got to find the captain and confront the source of the monsters. Now, we're nearing the end of Chapter 1, so it's time to get these last few achievements. First, you're going to want to keep fighting enemies until Efina reaches level 10 for the You're Looking Buff achievement. Next, I'm going to skip to the end and actually break a bit of continuity because you want to remove all your armor and equipment and actually get killed by the boss, which sounds crazy, but it's required for the next bad ending, meaning another achievement, as well as Theo being mortally wounded while Efina effectively loses her father. You get the achievement Hard Knock Life, and you know what? A hard knock life indeed. Now, back on the main timeline, if you haven't done so by this point, you want to eat all the cookies or most of the cookies in your inventory and that you've been hoarding to get the Serious Sweet Tooth achievement. Now, with the achievement hunting done, mostly, we can progress down the back alley to find the body of Captain Neal. Seems like Keith killed him as well, but thankfully, he's an immortal dragon, meaning he's going to keep coming back to life no matter how many times he's killed or how violently he's killed. Granted, he comes back with his energy drained and his body not always in the best of shape. So he's kind of out of commission for a while, meaning it's up to us to confront Keith. But before that, we're told that Rachel was the one that attacked him first, before he got shanked by Keith, then decides to just fall asleep with the knife stuck in him, so, you know, he can't die anyways. Fair enough, dude. We begin to cross-examine Keith's statements, and this man may think he's Manfred von Karma, but really he's just a Frank Solid. It doesn't take too long for him to have his Ace Attorney breakdown, and then we see, with Efina present, how lies can manifest and become physical beings. So what happens if a person keeps lying repeatedly and gets swallowed up in it? Well, a boss fight happens. So our first, final, and only boss of this chapter is against Keith, and I wish I could say more about it or some cool tips, but this really is basic RPG Maker boss fight, so use buffs, use AoEs to kill his ads, and then spam your strongest attacks while he hits you for like 2 or 3 damage at a time. The fight is a complete and total joke, but maybe that's the point to show Keith is kind of pathetic as a person. Not much to it. His boss theme is pretty good though. Weird way, it reminds me of the Murgo's Wet Nurse theme from Bloodborne. After the fight ends, Efina steels herself to devour the lies and confront the truth. What does this mean exactly? We see a flashback where Rachel awakened as a vampire and killed her father, but doesn't remember doing so. Whether it's because of trauma or something else, who can say? But according to the dialogue, it seems like Keith also tried to strangle her at some point after the fact. No, Keith, trust me, do not give the vampire girl animal blood. That'll just start a really crappy series of books that turn into movies that you're forced to go along to as a kid because your sister's obsessed with them, and you're too young to be allowed to stay at the house on your own. We then skip to the next day where Theo and Efina are talking with Keith, where Keith asks, "How did you know I was lying?" And Theo just points out the ever so important fact that we first talked to you outside in the middle of the day, you dipshit, ruling him off the vampire list immediately. Whether or not Rachel is alive, was killed, or taken to jail is left a mystery, but our work here is done, so it's off to another location, and after a game of rock, paper, scissors, our first chapter has come to an end. Or is it? Yeah, not quite, folks. See, whenever you finish the chapter, and after the credits have rolled, you'll be taken to the rec room where you can rewatch cutscenes, see the character artwork, listen to music, and read up on character bios for that chapter. For the last achievements here, we need to select the battle theme track 3, Liar, and set the play speed to minimum, and you can get the achievement Satanic Messages. You then need to select track 4, Lamp, and set it to maximum for the achievement Magical Girl. That second one was a joke. And that's all for this video. So yeah, I guess the question is, how do I follow up after the Dark Souls 3 video? Do I go bigger and better? Well, no, you can't. The Dark Souls 3 video is about as good of a video I could make on the editing software I'm currently using. I'm looking to get some new ones in the future. But more importantly, you may have noticed this wasn't the full game I was talking about. Really, this is kind of a test run for me because I'd like to cover some longer video games in the future, but I think a 30-hour game is about my upper limit for a single video. So if I ever want to cover something like Ys 8, I'm gonna have to figure something out, and ultimately this was my decision. While I still plan on covering a fair number of games in full, there are some games that I'll cover chapter or 2 at a time, giving me an easier time editing while potentially being able to go more in-depth, and when the full project is finished, I can kind of put it all together into one big supercut. Either way, that's all for this video. I'll see you all later for whatever crazy game I make a boss ranking for next, whatever video I decide to make next, and part 2 of LiEat. Thank you for watching. See you next time.